be far off? In Le Mans, France, I'm Jamie Kittman for Marketplace.
Jamie's a veteran automotive writer who is also New York bureau chief at Car and Driver magazine. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio with the Marketplace Morning Report. From 8 p.m., American Public Media.
At ViStar Credit Union, we believe in helping members reach their financial goals and building stronger communities. It's why we offer our members better rates and give back to the places we call home. ViStar Credit Union. Visit vistarcu.org/join. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
It's 1 minute after 9 o'clock. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Florida is suing the Biden administration over its crackdown on the state's education reforms by using accreditors to determine who gets student aid at colleges. As Susan Giles-Wantuck tells us, Governor Ron DeSantis says such agencies are not vetted and calls the practice unconstitutional.
The governor predicts the state will prevail in the lawsuit against the administration and the U.S. Department of Education. He says there's more than $100 billion in student aid riding on the decisions of private accreditation agencies each year.
You cannot take legislative power and delegate it to an unaccountable private body and let them administer that power without any type of checks and balances. And so we believe it violates what's called the private non-delegation doctrine.
Florida's accreditation is overseen by SACS, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. But DeSantis says SACS has an agenda that does not align with the state's goals. I'm Susan Giles-Wantuck in Tampa.
Works by a local artist group will return to Clay County's Halls of Justice for the second year in a row as part of the Art in the Courthouse series. The First Coast Plein Air Painters outdoor-themed art will premiere Tuesday afternoon. That's June 27th at the Clay County Courthouse on North Orange Avenue in Green Cove Springs. The fourth-floor art gallery is open to the public from 8 to 5, Mondays through Fridays, but to get there, you have to go through the courthouse security first. The displays will rotate through the gallery every 1 to 3 months. It is 73 degrees with some light rain in the Jacksonville area, 70% chance of rain today, stormy and breezy with highs in the upper 80s today.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Opinions expressed on the Friday Media Roundtable are those of our panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News.
Is Jacksonville becoming unaffordable? What does the expected return to the Jacksonville journey mean for the city? Changes in city council, what does that mean for the next year in local government? Hi, this is First Coast Connect, and Did the Jaguars manage to sell Jacksons in their Stadium of the Future during the community huddles? All that more just ahead with our roundtable. Good morning, and live with you from WJCT Studios. I'm A.G. Gankarski, and this is a special First Coast Connect with a live audience. Thanks for listening. And just ahead, all the top stories of the week with our Friday roundtable. We got 4 of the best here today. Then later, David McGowan, WJCT Public Media's president and CEO, will speak with Melissa Ross. But first this hour, it's Friday, and here to round up all the week's news, we welcome Nate Monroe of the Florida Times-Union.
Good morning, AG.
Dan Scanlon, WJCT News.
Morning, AG.
Outgoing City Council member Randy DeFore.
Good morning, AG.
And regular contributor and host next week, Charles Griggs.
Good morning, AG.
There are a lot of ways you can catch up with us. You can listen live on the radio, as many of you are doing. You can watch the video stream on Facebook or YouTube if you want more visual stimulation. You can tweet us at FCC On Air. We're not taking calls today, so that's the best way to get questions in. Email us, firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or message us on the First Coast Connect Facebook page. Let's begin with our top story. The pandemic accelerated a major divide between home prices and income across the country, and Jacksonville was no exception. In fact, according to a Real Estate Witch report, interesting source there, which looked at numbers from 2021, the Bold City is ranked 22nd on a list of the 25 least affordable U.S. metros for housing relative to income. So why is this? Why is the rent too dadgum high? And what's being done to rectify the situation? Randy, you've been on City Council for 4 years. Let's start with you. How's the City Council address this affordable housing crisis?
We really looked at it from a holistic point of view, and I wish there was an easy answer. There really isn't. I have some good news. The state has passed Live Local law. Now has allowed multi-family owners to come and file an application to get a tax break. So we're looking at this from an affordability standpoint. We're trying to do everything we can to get more affordable housing developed.
That Live Local law, tell us a little more about, is everybody eligible for this, or is this for some groups?
Well, you have to have certain tenants that meet a certain income level, and then you have to file, and the problem I see with it is you have to file annually, which I think is difficult. You're going to have to file annually, and you're going to have to do a market analysis to prove that your tenants are below a certain income level.
Yeah, I mean, Charles, you've been here for forever, and so you've seen changes, and I've seen changes too. I remember back in the day, you could rent a place in Riverside for $400, and you basically could live off of very sporadic freelance writing. I may have done that, but we've seen this upsurge in cost over the years, and it seems to be affecting more lower income communities also.
Yeah, it sounds more like you've been here forever. But but yeah, the prices have gone up significantly over the past 4 or 5 years, especially with landlords and owners, property owners, investors coming in and taking advantage of the market. What we're seeing now is an opportunity with the Live Local law, something, at least some type of potential relief. Now, News4Jax yesterday actually did a story that rental prices were actually seen to be going down about a half a percentage point. And so hopefully this is a trend that we'll see something going on here locally. The average rental cost is now between affordable housing is between $1,200 and $800 here in Jacksonville, which is lower than the national average. So hopefully we'll see this as a trend. And I can also say that, I'm on the Housing Authorities Board, Jacksonville Housing Authorities Board of Directors, and we have actually been looking to use some of our assets to invest in affordable housing and workforce housing. And that's the terminology now people are using, more workforce housing, because those are the people who make more than $70,000 a year who still can't afford housing if they have a family. So that's important. So hopefully we'll see some of these forces come together and help bring the market prices down.
Yeah, and Dan, there are proposals going around a long time using foreclosures, using vacant houses, things like that for affordable housing. What have you seen over the years, and what are you seeing now? Because what I'm hearing is that there are more renters versus buyers now than ever before in Jacksonville. outgoing councilperson Brenda Priestley Jackson said this is a town of renters. That stuck with me. She said it last year in city council. So, I mean, what are you seeing with this?
What I'm seeing is a ton of new multifamily construction along such avenues as Butler Boulevard, Southside Boulevard, and along the Southside Connector. And it's literally wall to wall. And then recently doing a film project at one of the really ritzy condos that exist on the South Side, wondering, boy, I'd love to live here. Look at all the amenities, but I didn't dare look at the price tag. I, like you, when I came here 40 plus years ago, had a $400 a month apartment, which had a pool and a nice laundry room, and I was within commuting distance of my early jobs, and everything was fine. As a starting employee in the city, I don't think I could find anything inexpensive enough within commuting distance of where I worked, and heaven forbid if I wanted mass transit to connect me from those places. It doesn't exist unless I walked a bit. In the case of where I first lived, I'd have to walk a long distance to get a Beach Boulevard bus.
Yeah, I mean, and things are tough all over. I mean, some of the stats this report had, accounting for inflation, home prices are up 118% since 1965, while median household income has increased by just 15%. This is real dollars, of course. Home prices up 7.6 times faster than income since 1965. Since 2008, 3.1 times faster than income. The average house to price income ratio is 5.4, more than double what experts recommend. The pandemic, with a lot of money going into the economy, a lot of currencies created by Trump and Biden, that also reflected in housing prices, 14.9% increase over that period. I mean, this isn't counting 22 and early 23. And, we're one of many metros dealing with this. Nate, you're part of the younger generation here. What is your demographic cohort dealing with? And I mean, and at the paper, I mean, you all have had long-ranging labor issues, negotiations to try to get a living wage. So you can speak to that too if you want to.
Yeah, thanks. What a nice compliment. I am part of the younger generation. I'm not. I don't think some of my colleagues who are younger than me consider me that. Something that happened in Jacksonville, like sort of during the course of the pandemic, is that we saw housing prices rise here the way that we did in cities all across the country. But I think here, a kind of a second thing happened. We almost saw like a market correction. Before the pandemic, I think that the city had a reputation for being quite affordable relative to its peer cities in Florida. That's gone, and that. There's always fluctuation in housing prices, and maybe the sort of in the aggregate housing prices will go back down, but our market correction is here to stay. I don't think that you're going to find the kind of great deals that you could find in Riverside or Springfield or even in pockets of the beaches. Those days are gone, and it makes it incredibly challenging to buy a house. And I mean that's just the bottom line. It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, Randy, you represent the historic district, so I mean, Riverside, Avondale, a lot of neighborhoods like that. Do you hear from your constituents about the affordability issues, whether it's property owners, homeowners, renters, what have you?
Absolutely. A lot of people have been asking for some sort of governmental rent restriction. I don't see that happening in the city at all. And the problem with my district is that it's all infill, so you're not seeing a whole lot of new development there. And we have an inventory shortage. So, and from the pandemic, the other thing we haven't discussed is the fact that we had a population increase. We saw a lot of people moving to the state of Florida, including Duval County. And so I think it's, as Nate said, I think this is an issue that's here to stay. I think we need higher rates of income. Personally, I think that's one thing. Some people blame Wall Street for that. That you see a lot of very rich people getting richer, but you didn't see a whole lot of middle class or lower class people getting richer. So it's a national issue that needs to be addressed.
Going along with these rates, Charles, I mean, obviously you've got interest rates too. We saw a trough in interest rates for a number of years. That was Fed policy. Now Fed policy is inching them up. More traditional levels, but that's kind of a double whammy for people in this market, correct?
Yeah, the lower interest rates were meant to assist people to be able to afford a home. But what we've seen here, and to Nate's point with the market correction, that's been because the investors have come in and taken advantage, and they're the ones correcting the market here. We were, local ownership made sure that, because landlords don't want turnover. They want they want stability. They want people in their property who's going to pay the rent on a regular basis. And if they're accustomed to paying $700, $800, $900, $1,000 for rent, and they're reliable, landlords are going to pretty much they're going to stay intact. But if someone comes in and makes them a deal, and one of these New York investors, and they sell it for 2-3 times as much as it's worth, then investors are going to come in and correct that and correct the market for them. They're going to get all of it they can immediately out of it. And that's what we've been seeing here in Jacksonville, especially all over the state of Florida, is that these investors have taken over, and they've made it very difficult for the local economy to stand up to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Something like JWB Real Estate here more locally, they do a lot of this too. They'll get homes, they'll refurbish them, they'll rent them out. A lot of build to rent neighborhoods now. So there's a lot going on. I'm A.G. Gankarski. You're listening to a special edition of First Coast Connect's Friday Media Roundtable, and we're going to move on to some other topics. Busy news week. Mayor-elect Donna Deegan will not be sworn in until July 1st, but her transition team is already working on bringing back the anti-crime initiative known as the Jacksonville Journey. So what exactly is the Jacksonville Journey? Many of you in this audience know it. You've been here for a while. And why is Deegan bringing it back? Dan, you've covered crime for a long time at the Times-Union, so you can talk about this a little bit, how it worked, why it went away, and go ahead.
Yeah, Dan.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. I now work here at WJCT, but I can be honest. I don't really know what the Jacksonville Journey did. I think that's the problem in this city, is that many fine, noble ideas are presented to fight crime, both on a city level as well as area ministries, and then we hear nothing about them. We inquire a year later. I can only think of one, Bishop Guns and Save Our Sons, that is still around after all these years and still working with kids. I checked the numbers this morning. We've had 47 murders officially, homicides officially as of now. We had 156 last year. I am getting an ears alert, that's a police alert, every few hours about a violent shooting or a death. So I dare say we'll hit 50 before this weekend is over. The numbers may be lower than in some previous years where we would top 200, but it's still, every one of those is a tragedy. And we've had this week at least 2 cases where men killed women. In one case, a pregnant woman with a child who survived birth but only lived a few more months. It's massive tragedy, and it's drive-bys, it's retribution. It appears to be gangs, which our new sheriff has been fighting for years to try to get the gang culture to back off this retribution, but it's still there. Can you prevent homicides? I don't know. You can certainly try to curtail some of the culture that is leading to the retribution deaths, but can you curtail a domestic situation? Unless you have good friends who notice something's wrong and they alert the right people, and that's a whole nother story about domestic. I don't know what the Jacksonville Journey can do about the domestics, the emotional end of things. I do know that bringing it back, trying to find out what it's doing, fund what was working, unfund what isn't working, and reorganize it is a good idea. The city has had some success with programs, but I think the idea of putting it back to ground zero and building it with the community's assistance and targeting, that may just do something.
Yeah, and this is really something interesting because when Lenny Curry came in after Alvin Brown, he wanted to reboot the Jacksonville Journey. He had Jack's Journey 2.0. Then he moved it over to the Kids Hope Alliance. And during one of Deegan's transition meetings recently, W.C. Gentry, who was part of that Journey 2.0 reboot, he said he didn't know where things were located in the city government. He didn't know what was responsible for what. There were silos, but it was unclear about assigned responsibilities. Nate, how would you evaluate Lenny Curry's reforms in this area? Because he talked a good game. Did he deliver much?
I think one of the challenges that the Journey has had since its inception, and it has carried through from the Payton administration through the Brown administration and the Curry administration, is it has never been funded at the levels that its architects envisioned. When Payton was mayor, the goal was to get these Journey programs collectively funded to a level around like $67 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. the entire Kids Hope Alliance budget is not $67 million today.
And that includes the Children's Commission
right.
Stuff from before, too.
Yeah, and Peyton was mayor a long time ago. So that's a lot of, that's many years of funding increases that have just never materialized. And, I think the challenge with that is the same sort of challenge you're going to find with any city program. You've got to have political will to fund at those kind of levels, and that's got to be a high enough priority for you. I think one of the challenges that the mayor is going to face, the incoming mayor is going to face in rebooting the journey, and this is something you and I have talked about before, is the original plan brought together, the school board, the sheriff, the city, the state attorney. I mean, there was this politically collective effort to address this problem. Right now, the sheriff is someone who is, potentially going to be a bit of an adversarial figure to the incoming mayor. He's, he backed her opponent in the election. He's made a pretty bold budgetary ask for the coming year for his own budget. The school board doesn't have a permanent leader. I mean, it feels like the kind of leadership culture in the city right now is like in flux, and I think that's going to be a challenge.
Let me just throw something in quick here, though. We do have the mayor bringing in a public safety director who was the director of the Police Athletic League and worked with kids. So right there could be a key mover and shaker in working on reviving child, teen, anti-violence programs. Lakeisha Burton was very successful as the PAL director, and she did, in fact, as she campaigned on this stage once during a debate, she did bring crime down in her Arlington district. So there is the possibility that there is someone there with the mayor, working with the sheriff, the fire chief, and others to start a program on safety prevention.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Dan. And I mean, we've seen, especially when you have a Democratic mayor, Republican sheriff, there's been adversarial relationships, Alvin Brown and John Rutherford. But it seems like Lakeisha Burton is going to sort of be a counterweight to TK Waters, sort of representing the administration. And even though she lost that election by like 10 points, she's going to be representing the executive branch. And it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic evolves, because that was a nasty campaign in 22. Waters attacked Burton pretty heavily. And so it's going to be interesting to watch. Randy, I want to jump back to the journey a little bit here.
Yes.
Yeah, because you've been on the council and you've seen the Kids Hope Alliance. But it feels like the concept never really took off in the way that the mayor's office suggested that it would, as sort of a one-stop shop for all these programs, correct?
That's absolutely correct. I agree with Nate. It was underfunded. It had a lot of drama. I mean, the Inspector General went into Kids Hope Alliance more than once. If you recall, there was leadership issues.
Yeah.
So I don't think it ever really took off in the way it should have. And I also agree with Nate in the sense that in order for this to work in any whatever it looks like, whatever you want to call it, it has to be community driven. Everyone has to come to the table and be in agreement that this is what they want to happen. And if you've got a sheriff that's unwilling to work with the mayor, it won't happen. So I think as a city, we need to really, as best we can, put pressure on the sheriff to say, please, please work with this mayor, because we as a city need that.
Yeah, and Charles, I do want to talk about the journey a little bit, because one more for you on that. When we look at this issue, I mean, the journey is not something that has instant results. I mean, you're working with kids basically, and it's younger kids trying to make sure they don't fall into a life of crime. And so it's not something that basically started up, you get effects year 1, year 2, right? It's got to be a sustainable thing.
Yeah, so I actually served on the Journeys Oversight Committee, and I served on one of the 7 committees that kind of vetted out some of these community solutions. And out of the first 4 years, the city saw 34% reduction in violent crime.
What drove that?
Yeah, what drove it was the preventive measures, the preventive programs, along with some of the funding that were, like Mayor-elect Deegan said, we left a lot of grant money on the table. We're leaving a lot of grant money on the table. The city went after some of that grant money to help support law enforcement, and that through that funding, they were able to use that money to sort of as the law enforcement people like to say, keep the bad guys away from the folks, good people in the community. But the journey was really driven by the prevention programs, the after-school programming, and a lot of it was very much innovative and driven by the community. Many of the folks who came out and who were putting forth program ideas were people from the community who were up close and personal to some of the activities that were going on. And I'll say this as well. The thing that really sort of drove the community surrounding, participation surrounding the Jacksonville Journey, the building, was the death of Drushana Davis, the 8-year-old girl who got killed. She got killed in her home.
Back in the Payton administration.
Right, during the Payton administration, and Mayor Payton was so moved by that. I mean, it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. And really, it was his leadership that said, hey, we got to get everybody together. And I think that's what we're hearing from Mayor-elect Deegan, is that this is the type of attitude we'll have going into this process, whereas everyone's got to work together in order to solve this problem, and everyone has to have buy-in. And the one thing that was missing, that was a part of the actual recommendations that never really came to fruition, was that it was supposed to be a private sector portion of it, where the private sector came in with their support. And because the government was funding it, we had nonprofits as a part of it as well, but the private sector never really sort of stepped up. So hopefully this time, the private sector will step up and be a part of this.
Well, don't forget, AG, don't forget that after Drushana Davis died, there were 2 pastors groups who came forward with multi-step programs. Those never seemed to be adopted or had any life to them. So that indeed is some private sector. And these were some heavy hitters among the pastoral crowd that should have been able to get businesses involved. And I, again, don't know what happened to that. We covered that for many months at the Times Union when I was there, and nothing came of it.
Got a question from listener Nancy Powell that I'll throw up to anybody on the panel because I don't know the answer to this. What happened to the Chicago initiative Mayor Curry brought here? Can't remember the name of it. Does anybody remember the name of it?
Cure violence.
Cure violence. What happened with that?
That's a great question. I think the city council should have brought that program in front of them and asked for accountability and return on investment, because there appeared to be no real data. We kept asking for data, give us data, give us data, give us data, and it never materialized. It was expanded briefly. We heard of it last. I heard of it last after a student was shot walking to the high school on Main Street in Springfield. They were out there protesting along with others the next day, and I've heard nothing since. So, and any attempt to ask the mayor's administration about it usually was given a short answer, but nothing much more.
Understood.
I think that there's been some skepticism on council, and I also think within JSO and the state attorney's office about cure violence, in part because of this idea that there probably should be better data that we're not seeing. What I will say about cure violence, and I think the way that this ties into the journey, is that something about the original journey concept that is also going to be difficult to recreate, because we like to see results, even if they take a while. I think there was a willingness to embrace creativity, to just kind of try things, and if not everything works, that's okay. And so I will say that the jury is still out on whether the investment in cure violence has worked out. I mean, I think just on a top line, if you just look at homicide numbers, they're as bad as they've ever been here. But I do respect that cure violence is not necessarily something that fit into Mayor Curry's kind of law and order, broken windows policing theory. It's something that the city tried, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. And that should be the spirit of a revived journey too.
Yeah, it's 9:27. You're listening to First Coast Connect Friday Media Roundtable. Deegan administration's got a lot more to deal with in Jacksonville's journey too. Infrastructure, they've got to get a budget ready. They may use a lot of Lenny Curry's baseline budget, but I expect some changes based on these transition committees. And of course, August is when the magic happens. The Finance Committee will consider the Deegan budget. As Sam Moose used to say, the mayor proposes, the council disposes. So I expect a lively discussion in the Finance Committee all August. That's must-see TV. I want to move on. Speaking of City Council, last night the newly elected members were sworn in at the Jacksonville Center for Performing Arts, that's the name of it now, along with several other governmental officials. Charles, you were on the scene. Tell us about that event.
Well, actually, it was a pretty good event. We got a chance to see the new council for the first time all together in one room. The highlight typically is the outgoing council president's speech and the incoming council president's speech. Councilman Freeman outlined his accomplishments.
Didn't he talk about his family too? Wasn't there an emotional
He gave an
component?
impassioned message about his family because you all may recall that he had a son who was recently born and who had some medical issues, and it was a tough time for him during that time, but he felt like his council members were there to support him during that. I think probably what struck some folks about his accomplishments message that he did not really reference the redistricting battle as one of the things that happened on his watch. But other than that, I think that was probably the less than curious piece about it. Council President Salem outlined his 7 priorities, leading with, as we probably heard in the media, moving jail from its current location to someplace north, and along with the stadium piece. And that is going to be his heavy lift for his administration. And I'll say that one of the things that is going to be a challenge for him is that these are not, I don't want to say necessarily bold priorities, but they're long-term priorities. I mean, it's going to be the stadium piece is going to be, we already know what's coming. We know what's on the docket. But these council presidents have to do these things in 1 year, right? It's not enough time.
And there's always something that comes up, like redistricting for Freeman.
Right.
The HRO for a number of city council presidents over the years. I mean, there's always a crisis, Confederate monuments, you name it. But, Dan, I want to go to you because, I mean, that jail would be a $250 million hit in today's money. The longer they wait, the more it's going to cost. The stadium's going to cost a lot. Salem said he wanted a proposal that was fair to the taxpayers and the Jaguars. So that's a lot of capital commitment there because stadium's going to be $1 billion if you believe the MOU from the Jaguars. And money's not cheap right now. So are these generational commitments that Salem and Deegan are going to be dealing with?
Well, it's hard to believe, but where the jail is now, that was once the election supervisor office, and it was a heavy lift to move it off of the river 2 blocks in. The question is, what happens to that property when the jail moves? It should be private development, but who wants to live next to a sheriff's office? And that sheriff's office is in need of replacement. It is in a white elephant the day it was built. I don't know what's going to happen there. Obviously, you're right. You've got the major story, the major heavy lift is going to be to get the negotiation started on the new stadium. Will there be enough brain power and manpower left to start thinking about moving that jail, which should have been done years ago? It is overcrowded, it is understaffed, it is having issues, as we've discussed on the show before, and moving it to the P Farm, Lanny Road area where there's lots of land and you can spread it out instead of making it 7-8 stories tall is a logical thought, and it gets it away from downtown, which means you may not have, well, if I was parking there yesterday, it's not a nice place to park right now around the jail and police complex.
Right. Councilwoman DeFore, you want to get in here?
I do. I just wanted to add to that when I was researching the Lot J deal, I talked to developers all across the country, and they said if you move that jail, you'll have no problem with developers coming to town, knocking on your door.
Okay.
So it is at its end of life. Something's going to have to be done with it. I think it's a huge lift by President Salem, but it needs to, at least a study needs to be done, see how to go about doing it.
Yeah, and he's got some other priorities in here too. You've got the opioid crisis. He said there's like $80 million in settlement money, Nate, coming in, and solid waste and recycling assessment, a pilot composting program. How do you assess the city council's ability to address these issues?
I mean, they're not going to all do it this first year. That's just not going to happen. These are all way too complicated. Solid waste, the trash fee, something is going to need to happen with that eventually. The jail is, building new jails are just nightmares. Dan mentioned a potential site, the P Farm, that's in the very, very far north end of the county. That site actually brings some complications. It's very, very, very far from the courthouse. And, defendants making first appearances have a right to be in the courthouse. That's going to be a logistical issue that could add cost. I mean, any one of these issues would be enough to consume a mayor's entire first term, and we've got a whole list of them here.
Yeah, and Randy, I want to get you in here again because I want to ask you about another proposal we had, the meetings with the school board. We've seen some council presidents that really push school board collaboration. I believe Tommy Azuri did, but then another council president comes in and then it's gone. I mean, the school board's taken a hard turn to the right in the 2022 election. It's a majority Republican board, obviously a super majority Republican city council. What kind of interface would you expect from these meetings? And do you think they can actually make progress this time with Ron carrying the ball where some other council presidents got incompletes?
I don't think it can hurt, for sure. I mean, I was chair of the VAB board for 2 years in a row, so I had interaction with school board members a lot. And I think there's an opportunity to really make a difference as a community if the council and the school board works together. You see a tremendous decline in enrollment in the public school system. You see increases in the charter schools. You see the vouchers are going to come. So I think it's really important that at least they have conversations, open conversations.
Yeah, and I've got a follow-up for you also. We look at the demographics of the city council and, it's a lot of males. There's not going to be a line for women's bathroom because you got 2 city council members who are female, 17 who are going to be male. And so how do you think that might affect the council? It's going to be a boys' club. I mean, you got a mayoral administration with a lot of women in high places.
I think it's an issue, and there are no white women. I think it is an issue. When you see your representatives not really reflect your community, that's a problem. But I believe that since you have a female mayor, there's a balance. That's where you're going to get your balance.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This is the First Coast Connect Friday Media Roundtable. It's 9:35 WJCT. We're going to move on to another topic here. The Jacksonville Jaguars. They wrapped up their community huddles, which were designed to help sell the Stadium of the Future yesterday. Did these huddles work? I mean, they want $1 billion from the city. Obviously, they want 67% of the stadium investment, and they're going to put in a lot more money on the stadium district. Nate, how would you evaluate Mark Lamping's sales pitch, especially during this liminal space between these two administrations?
I think that these huddles were successful for the Jaguars in the sense that we are now talking about the stadium renovation on their terms. The term sheet that the Jaguars presented the city is probably better understood as like a wish list. But we're now, I think the conversation, the public conversation has shaped people's expectations that the term sheet is like the plan, and that the design of the stadium in the drawings that they're sharing and the renderings, like that's what it's going to look like. And the construction timeline that the Jaguars have presented, though, that's the timeline. That's what we have to start working around. And in reality, all of that stuff is open to negotiation and is yet to be negotiated. And so for the Jaguars, I think this worked really well for them. They are getting this conversation off to a start on their terms.
Yeah, and Dan, I mean, that MOU didn't come out of heaven. I mean, that was a document that came out of some discussions or after discussions with the Curry administration. Why now? Why did they wait until Lenny Curry's leaving office to push something that may have been negotiated with Curry's senior staff?
All I can think of is where we're sitting right now is in the middle of finally a lot of development starting. We've got the Four Seasons, we've got the park, we've got Mosh. We have so much between here and the old City Hall site that is now under or really being worked on in development. That could be the driving force. Finally, things are happening on the North Bank, and now it is time to fold in a stadium renovation with all that so that it all comes true at the same time, and there's a destination part of the city to go to. In 10 years, this could be the coolest place in Florida to go hang out. A game, a party, a hotel, a luxury hotel, restaurants, bars, the Elbow, etc. That could be the fix right there. Seriously, if there was a window on that end of this hallway, we'd see the stadium, and that used to be the showpiece, and now it's a drafty, hot, wide open place where we think of Monster Jam sometimes more than Jaguars.
AFC South champion Jacksonville Jaguars, to be clear.
I understand.
So, go Trevor. So Charles, I mean, obviously it would be a big financial lift. It seems like Deegan is willing to move toward a significant financial commitment. Ron Salem gives the same impression. You know, does the city really have the bonding capacity to do this? I mean, Lenny Curry told me yesterday on the radio that the city has money, it's in good credit position, et cetera. But, you know, when you're looking at a project like this, it's like 30-year financing, correct? I mean, they can't do it instantly. What are some ways that they can maybe drive some of the revenue from this special district?
Yeah, this is, I mean, you know, to Nate's point, with the presentations, didn't really feel like it left much expectation for negotiation. It really feels like this is it, and now city figure out a way to pay for it. The way that maybe, I've heard some discussion about perhaps this should be looked at a different way, not just a stadium deal, but more like a community redevelopment plan, much like the Better Jacksonville plan, and figure out a way to fund that type of plan with the stadium included in it, giving the community much more to look forward to than just a stadium and the area around it. And perhaps that may be a way for the city to get out and talk to the community and figure out the other things they like to see and include it in the package. If you're going to go big, you might as well go big, right? And maybe that way the Jaguar, you know, this doesn't feel certainly like the Jaguars are dictating the terms of what's going on here, because it certainly feels like, you know, they put on a great show. They covered every area of town. To their credit, they're doing what they're supposed to do, right? They're supposed to sell this community on, you know, what's next. And again, one of the things that we always forget is that the NFL has to approve this deal.
Right.
Whatever happens.
3/4 of owners, correct?
That's right. You know what that means, that the NFL is going to get theirs one way or another. And we've seen this in the other communities that's building the new stadiums right now in Buffalo and in Nashville. So we've seen that happening right now, and we understand that whatever the city comes up with in terms of a finance package or a way to pay for this, the NFL has to approve it, and they're going to get their money out of it.
Yeah, and, you know, we look at that, you know, obviously you look at where the polling is on this. You know, locals are reluctant to spend this money if you look at UNF polling from last year. So you had a lot of manufacturing consent in recent weeks, but how do you get around the fact that 80% of people in the UNF poll said they don't want to spend $750 million? Does there need to be a straw ballot, a referendum, or is this something where Donna Deegan just basically uses her political capital and the bully pulpit of the mayor's office said, let's go? This is for you, Charles.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think that. I think there are many ways to creatively fund this, and just because taxpayers don't want it to be on a burden for them, there are other ways to fund this. There are other types of fees. There are types of situations you can bring into the stadium, into the area. There are very creative ways to do this, and I think it's important to remember that Mayor-elect Deegan said that they were going to bring other folks in here she was going to rely on other voices to tell her from outside of the community how this could be possibly done. And I think, there are creative ways to do this. I think the public, though, when they think of this, they see $750 million or $1 billion. They think that money is coming directly from property taxes. And that may not be the case. And so there are creative ways to get this done. We just have to wait and see what they come up with.
Yeah, and Randy, I want to go back to you on this too, because you were on city council when the Lot J deal failed. They needed a 2/3 supermajority. They didn't get there, 1 vote short. Garrett Dennis balked at the mayor's office being on board with the proposal. This time around, I mean, if you're advising Deegan, and hypothetically speaking, would you urge her to put some money for this in the budget? Because, when they vote up the budget, it's a 10-9 thing. They can do it on a majority, but when you're doing it as a special project, that's a 2/3 vote, and theoretically, people can grandstand on it.
I think she is putting $2 million into the budget in order to hire experts to negotiate the deal. Just real quick on the timing, I know we're running out of time. In neighborhoods this week, President Salem brought forth legislation to hire consultants in order for the council to be able to review whatever deal comes out so they can understand it. What I thought was interesting about it is that Brian Hughes got up and said, these are the consultants that we were going to use, but when Davis lost, we didn't feel the need any longer to hire them, which tells me that the deal, the memorandum of understanding that was done very quickly. It was on the back, it's basically on the back of a napkin, and it was the Jaguars asking for everything and they wanted. So it's a starting point. I think you're going to see Deegan come to the table with our own experts, and it'll be interesting where it ends up.
Yeah, I mean, and for his part, Mark Lamping is giving, really positive quotes. He told JXT, it's played out exactly as we hope it would. A lot of people came to the meetings, a lot of comments. Nobody pulled any punches. We heard the good, we heard the bad, and desires to end up with a better plan, which we will. He said parking was an issue and a consideration. They need to work on that and accessibility. So yeah, this project, long story short, it's in flux. Deegan takes office July 1st, and they want to get it moving later this decade. So it's going to be a big first-term issue.
You imagine what this project would have looked like if the Jaguars did not win the AFC South?
Yeah, I mean, that's the open question.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and really, if the Jaguars had gone 7-10 last year, finished in third place, this could have been a different thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's 9:45, and it is time for our lightning round. We had no sound effect this week because of the unique setup. So if you want to make a lightning sound out there, go ahead. Nate, what are you working on?
I should have known the lightning round was coming, and I just did not.
It's been raining all week, dude.
Yeah, I just did not prepare anything for it. I'm writing a little bit this week about the sheriff's request for 80 new positions in the upcoming budget. I take a look at some of the sheriff's office financing and sort of questioning whether we know enough about his budget to tell if 80 officers make sense or not.
Do we have a retrospective on the Lenny Curry administration to look forward to?
Yeah, I'm putting something together. That's a next week thing.
Yeah, that should be interesting. So, keep your Times Union subscription current for Nate.
I do, by the way.
Yeah, he's the reason I got one too. Dan, what you got for us? What are you working on?
Well, I worked on this week the fact that the sheriff is going to hold his first town hall meeting on the 19th, and that's something previous sheriffs have not done. I'm sure it'll be talking a lot about what he wants to do, such as new districts instead of zones. But it could be interesting to see how many of the public show up. And for the fun part tomorrow, St. Augustine, Francis Field, 126 classic cars launch across country in the Great Race. It should be a lot of fun to watch these old buggies tackle a time speed distance rally with just a clock and their brains to get there.
Yeah, we talked to you about this last week, or earlier this week on the show, and talked about driving a 1936 car and getting a palmetto bug?
I got a palmetto bug smack in my forehead at 60 miles per hour outside of Gainesville driving a 36 Buick Indy car. So that's just the least of the things they have to worry about. They could even face snow by the time they get to Colorado in an open 1915 or 1920 car.
Yeah, that should be interesting.
I'll watch it on TV.
Yeah, I'll be watching on TV too. I hate to drive. Charles, what you got for us today?
Governor DeSantis is suing President Biden and the Department of Education for their use of the accreditation agencies, says that his policies are, because they won't bend to the will of his policies. So that's going to make it rough for those colleges and universities in our state that have to follow his laws if they have to go through these accreditation authorities.
Yeah, you got a very litigious governor's office. A lot of suits on Biden. That's one of many.
Your tax dollars at work.
Yeah, and if you're watching Fox News, you'll probably see him on there later today, or Ashley Moody talking about this. Councilwoman DeFore, a little different subject here. What's next for you now that you're off city council? Are you going to run for something again, or?
You got a lightning round ready.
I have my lightning round ready.
Okay, you can give us our lightning round too, but I want to answer that.
All right, so save the date for next Friday's Amplified Avondale Music Art Experience. It's Friday, June 30th, 6 to 9:30, with the biggest event to date, nationally recognized award-winning jazz musicians John Lumpkin and Lexi Hamner. So show up, it'll be fun.
Yeah, I'll walk over. Coming up on the show, we got Florida Roundup today at noon on the station. We'll take a closer look at why hundreds of thousands of Floridians have lost Medicaid coverage since April. The Med Show on this week's What's Health Got to Do with It? will examine chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, and how the environment can handle it. That'll be tomorrow afternoon at 4. Encore presentation Sunday night at 9. Thanks to our panel, Randy DeFore.
Thank you.
Charles Griggs.
Thank you.
Dan Scanlon.
Thanks.
And Nate Monroe.
Thank you.
Up next, David McGowan will speak with Melissa Ross. A very special goodbye.
Good morning. I'm David McGowan. I'm here with Melissa Ross as a guest, and I was sitting there watching the program as you were right next to you, and I was thinking, wow, this must be very strange for you, Melissa. You have owned the chair that I'm sitting in for 14 years. Yeah. So how does it feel?
It feels incredible to have had the chance to do this job for 14 years. Let me first say that. And I'm so grateful to see all of your faces out here today, a live audience, many of whom are my friends. Give yourselves a hand for being here. Thank you for coming. And thank you so much for supporting this show and WJCT Public Media. I just want everyone here to know, and everyone listening, how much that means, not just to me or to David, but to everyone who works here. As I leave WJCT, I'm going to continue to support this organization every way I can, because I think it is so important to this community. And I agree with David. What the mission here is to bring people together. And I know that this show will continue to do that. I think in these times, nothing is more important. That what unites us is so much greater than what divides us. So keep supporting it, please. And I know you will.
Melissa, we have talked in the last week or so a lot about this opportunity that you have.
Yeah.
And
I said I wasn't going to do this. I'm sorry.
I mean, let me say on behalf of the station, and I think on behalf of all of your supporters and audience, that we're really excited for you. It is a great opportunity, and we've talked about it as an opportunity to learn. And it's really a special thing when you have an opportunity at a certain point in your career to do something entirely new and to learn from it. And we embrace that here because that's really what we're all about, is about
Absolutely.
Lifelong learning. But I wanted to flip that around for a minute and ask, you started this program 14 years ago. What have you learned during that time? I mean, that's a long run.
I think the list is so long. I mean, where do you even begin? There have been so many amazing people we've had the opportunity to put on the air and to welcome into our family here. So many smart, talented people. And so I guess what I've learned is that this community is rich. This community is rich in talent, in intellect, and in love and humanity. And it's in everyone. And the other thing I learned is that everyone has a good story. You just have to bring it out. Everyone has a good story. Everyone sitting here today has amazing stories to tell. And it's just been my privilege to amplify those stories. I can't think of anything more exciting and rewarding to do, other than what I'm going to get to go do now. I mean, I'm so excited about Mayor-elect Deegan. She has been a friend for a long time and used to be a colleague. And I am really excited about what she is going to do for Jacksonville. And I know all of you are too. And so it's just such an honor to get to go to work in her administration and try to continue the kinds of initiatives that we do here, but just in a different way. And I think the discussion we just heard with the Roundtable encapsulates that, yes, there are a lot of challenges facing this city, but I have confidence in this administration's ability to meet those challenges. And most importantly, as the guys said, to bring the community along. That is so important, and I think that's something that Mayor Deegan believes in with all of her heart. The community is everything, and they've got to have buy-in to everything that's going to improve this city. So it's just been an incredible privilege to be part of this organization for 14 years that I think does that same kind of work. And I want to, let me just, if I could, I want to give you a special thanks, David, for championing not only the shows I worked on, but everyone in the newsroom and everyone in this building. Thank you for your leadership. I want to really thank David Luckin. If it weren't for David, this show never would have made it. He has been the heart and soul of this show from the first day. I love him, and I'm going to miss him. Heather Schatz, the amazing senior producer on this show, she is so talented, and she's going to keep giving her talents. Thanks to everyone in the newsroom and everyone in this building. Thanks to the community for listening and calling in and tweeting and contributing to the conversation. And I know you'll continue to do that because it's a unique platform and it's one that we've got to keep supporting. And I know that's going to happen.
Melissa, I think I'm going to let that be the final word. I will only say that you and I have spoken recently, and I said to you, don't start the spin-in already, Melissa. And I know that you and our audience can expect us to cover the Deegan administration with all the vigor and journalistic integrity that we would cover any other administration.
And I wouldn't have it any other way.
So with that, thank you so much, Melissa, for your service. We honor you for that and wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you so much.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.